Hey, sorry, I missed what you just said. I can hear
Okay, we can hear you.
now. Okay, cool.
You're good.
Alright.
So, oh gosh, I just became a meme.
Wait, what are you talking about?
So I took a break and I went to the restroom and then I didn't mute my mic, so I went to the bathroom and apparently everybody heard it.
Oh man, that sucks, dude.
Yeah,
You got roasted.
I did. I don't know how it picked it up though from like at least 20 feet away.
Dude, I think honestly that's getting used to the camera or getting used to the mic is one of the hardest things about streaming constantly. You gotta be so careful around it. You don't know exactly what it's listening to. Everything is pretty hard, I think.
You know, I'm looking at it now and it's pointed in the direction of the bathroom.
That's the first mistake.
Darn. So how are you? How are you on this lovely Friday?
I'm doing great. I've been working on video editing, and so basically I have a schedule of coming to Gatsu's a couple hours before the stream and working on video editing and stuff like that.
How close do you live to Gatsu and Wizzy?
I live about 15 minutes away from Gatsu. Wizzy lives about 40 minutes away, which is a little bit further, but Wizzy also lives directly next to Plup, like next door. So he gets to be really close to Plup in exchange for not being close to Colin, myself, or Gatsu.
Fair trade.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool.
So, so the stream is emphasizing improvement, but it'll be a fun laid back stream as well. So, tell us a little bit about your history.
Okay, so I actually spent a shameful amount of time as just a scrubby brawl player. Basically just played with my friends, did the same old thing. Actually, I got into Smash first when Brawl came around because I never played Melee at all. So for me, Brawl was my first like introduction to the Smash community, and the only introduction I got to it was my friends talking about it at school, you know, and hyping it up like that. So I got into it really late. I basically got into it eventually because I started hanging out coincidentally with Josiah Tegg, who most people wouldn't know, but he's a very old school Marth player from Western New York, and I started hanging out with him as a friend actually outside of Smash, and he happened to be the best player in Western New York, and so after a while of me being like trying to convince him to play Brawl, he instead convinced me to play Melee, and that's how I got into Melee. So I was just up in the wintry snows of upstate New York playing with like one person, but he was a really good person, so that's my origin story.
Okay. Apparently, I put you up too high, so I'm.
Yeah, we got people complaining about the volume in the chat now.
So you know you play with Josiah Tag, and it kind of shows because you're pretty proficient against Marth.
Yeah.
So you know the journey happens. You know you're probably doing research even before this 20 GX meme happens, and all of a sudden you make that epic horse stock comeback into Korean DJ. So why don't you like tell us about that part of your career?
Well, actually, that was a pretty weird part of my career because I had actually moved to a place in New York called Ithaca. Ithaca is the town that hosts Cornell, so that's basically what it's useful for. And it's very far away from everything. It's about 2 hours away from Syracuse, about 4 hours away from Rochester, about 4 hours away from New York City. And so I was living there, and basically I had two players who were much lower level than me to play with, but other than that, I didn't have any Smash to play with. So that was the time period where I got the most into researching things and just practicing solo. And I was very I developed a very good routine of being consistent with practicing all the time. And
what would it look like?
Yeah. What would the practice look like?
Yeah.
Well, basically, I came up with this idea very early that the way to get as proficient as possible technically is to think about your range of motion inside the game and focus on stressing that as your thing to practice all the time. Like, an example is that if you want to learn pivot wave dash, for me, the way that I practice pivot wave dash is to practice it out of the most extreme cases of other motions. So if I'm doing a dash, I want to dash as far as possible before doing a pivot wave dash. Or if I want to do an aerial, I want to pivot wave dash as soon as I get out of lag, and practice that timing of everything being, you know, as tightly or like broadly linked as possible. And so in that, I just practice flexibility in different actions and stuff like that, and I come up with as many, like, I'm trying to balance relevance with difficulty and just trying to scale up and always work on something that is relevant to my current skill set.
Right. So you're fine-tuning your tools, but like you don't want to pay too much for the tools at the same time.
Yeah, like an example is a pivot edge hog out of dash. That's a really good tool for Falcon because you would just grab the legend instantly. But I've decided not to work on it because I think dash, pivot wave dash is almost as successful. And the amount of difficulty involved in dash pivot to the ledge is hard enough that I feel discouraged from actually practicing or trying to bring it into play.
Okay. So, you know, I feel like we can also go into mindset because I feel like, you know, there's like perception of the greater social media, right? So like you versus Korean DJ was this huge upset, and all of a sudden, you know, you're Reddit's like golden child, like everybody loves you. And then with the growing, if you're loved, you also get culminate haters too. So you don't match up to par, then like the public perception kind of gets to you at times when, like, you know, all these voices are coming in, and I know that can be difficult to deal with. So like, what were some of the struggles in that?
See, I think my biggest struggle, even to this day, and I think the StJ beef kind of called on that, is that I didn't grow up with like very much technology and very much access to the internet or anything like that. So I think I'm honestly bad at reacting correctly to the way that people talk on the internet. I think I'm like easily trolled, and I just react quickly. And so I think that's been the hardest thing. Like when I see people acting negatively or talking negatively, it's really like tempting for me to just want to argue with it and want to be like, you know, want to let my ego get in the way and stuff like that. And so basically I think, you know, my beef with SJ was kind of humbling in that fashion of like, I really need to work on not like making this game about, you know, ego war with everybody else. So that's the hardest thing for me, is making sure that it's not about my ego and that I am still focusing on improvement without like badly reacting to the internet or stuff like that, or just the way that people perceive me. It's rough to see, like even during the KDJ thing, you know, there's a lot of people who are negative about it, and it's rough to see that and stuff, and it's hard to react to. Because during the KDJ thing, everybody's just calling me a fraud or whatever. Yeah,
it's kind of it's tough because you know, there's like your perception, and you know, you're a very confident player, and I really respect that. But then you get all this noise, and like kind of, I feel like part of it can get kind of tiring for you after a while.
Yeah.
So you get this, and then I forget the timing of it. There's just so much melee history. When was the Korean DJ? Was it 2 years ago? 1 year? I don't know.
I'm actually not sure when KDJ was. It was NSA 2, but I don't really know what date that is, but I want to say it was like a year and a half ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was weird timing because when I started playing, like, Armada was the best player, and basically that's who I looked up to my whole time and stuff. And so that's like the region that's like the time period that I came in was just during Armada's like reign, and so I was not that like well developed or anything like that when I played against KDJ. And now I'm in a position where I'm so much better than I was when I played KDJ, but people only think about that, you know, and so it's like, it's kind of a weird spot in my career right now too.
So you you know, you go back and forth between Florida and I believe New York and maybe New England. You get some performances, and then finally you do pretty well. I would argue that your Big House 4 performance might be comparable to your NSA 2 performance. So do you want to talk to us about that, about like the few months leading into that and what you were doing?
Well, yeah, basically after KDJ, I eventually moved to Florida, and that was a decision on my part because I did not like living in upstate because of climate issues. Like, I mean,
I just didn't. It's depressing.
It's very, very depressing, especially for me. I mean, I think it affects me more than it affects a lot of people, but for me, it was like, the fact that the last winter I lived there, it lasts from October to March, or October to May of the next year. So that's like an 8-month block of winter. And so after that, I decided that Florida is really good for the climate, and it's really good for it's like cheap prices and really good Smash. So I decided to move to Florida. Everything got way harder immediately, obviously. Like in New York, in Western New York, I was the second best. Josiah Tech could still beat me, but nobody else could beat me. And if they did beat me, I'd always win in losers, you know? It's like, I was the second best, and I was used to it and everything. But going to Florida, the first time I came here, I lost to Pi immediately in losers. He's just like the second best Samus in Florida. And I lost to him. I lost him immediately. I was having a lot of trouble losing to a lot of people, and eventually I got to the point where I only lost to like 7 players in Florida, which would be like HBox, Plup, Cobalt, Wizzy, Gatsu, Porkchops. But other than that, I never lost to anybody. And that's when I went to Big House 4, and at Big House 4, I got 17th, and I beat. I can't remember. I don't really remember what my bracket was. I lost to Leffen in winner's bracket in like winner's quarters or something.
I think you had a win against you had a win against Duck, right?
Yeah, I beat Duck to get 17th place. People in chat are talking about my Mofo loss. That was like the first time I was ever streamed, like way before KDJ even. But yeah, I beat Duck. That was the biggest accomplishment at that tournament. And I beat Fishit too, which is weird. The Fishit match between us was to get into top 32, and it was actually really funny because the first match that we played on Battlefield, and I got 3-stocked by his DK, and that was like, I was like, okay, I'm clearly just getting like crouch cancel grab near the ledge, so that's obviously what I have to work on for this next match. And so then in the next match, I took him to Dreamland, and I 3-stocked him back, and then he tried to counterpick Peach against me, and I 3-stocked him again. So I ended up winning, but every single match was a 3-stock, even the match that he 3-stocked me. So I think that's funny.
Doesn't your playstyle really work well against like Samus and Peach though?
Actually, when I first got to Florida, I was getting spanked by Samus so hard. But despite what people think, I'm actually very like aggressive. Like I don't just like run in and attack all the time, but I'm always moving proactively. I'm always trying to make a situation happen. And against Samus, for a while, I was getting spanked by like just basic like crouch cancel down tilt stuff, like not getting my aerials low enough when I'm attacking and stuff, and getting rocked by that. And also, I always went off stage trying to edge guard Samus because I was just like, screw it, I'll just make a read, like get a movement read, and I would just get rocked over and over again until I finally learned my lesson. But I'm actually a little bit more like, if you have a playstyle where you're committed to camping, that really works well against characters like DK. There's no way he can ever catch you, but I will approach a DK still, and so I'm like likely enough to, if I mess up, I'm gonna get grabbed or whatever. Well, I actually played against West Balls when he came to my house. I played against him a lot, and his DK would give me trouble if I let it grab me ever, because West Balls is like really solid. You know, he's not going to drop that combo at all.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it would give me a lot of trouble, but then I would just play like less stupid against him, and he would just whine about it.
Yeah, I can picture it. Why do you play so lame?
Yeah. He's like, all I can do is grab. I can't make a West Balls voice at all.
Yeah. You guys are like the ultimate homies. So 20GX, you know, you guys started your new channel. What's that about?
Okay, so 20GX is about the Florida Falcons and what we're trying to do to improve Falcon by himself, but I also think that through the improvements that we make towards Falcon, we're going to make improvements on every other character. Like, for example, we're really stressing that pivot jumps are implemented into our playstyle, and that, of course, is going to work for a lot of characters, including the Spaceys and Marth, and, you know, I mean, even situationally for Sheik and Jibs and whatever, but it works for every character, and it expands out to the rest of the community well. But basically, the point of our channel is to make our movement as clean as possible, and like punishing optimally is very like stressed as well. But I think the misconception is that people don't think that we want to make reads in neutral and stuff like that, but I think that we are just like weaker players in that category because, you know, from my backstory, it's easy to understand why optimal movement would be something that I'm a little bit more inclined to because I've practiced alone for a long time and I just studied the game alone for a long time. But we're also working on understanding like situations with just center stage, neutral game play and everything like that, and we want to use our superior movement to give us an advantage and everything like that. But basically, it just boils down to us working on self-improvement as much as possible. Yesterday, I actually had a stream where all we did was just discuss like what we could be doing better. We were looking at videos and everything like that, and we got a really positive review from that. And that was something we were scared to do because we thought that it would be, well, at least I thought that it would be maybe selfish and maybe people wouldn't be as interested in watching it. But we got a really positive review, so in the future we're going to focus on that more and just. Like, literally, you're just tuning in to two people in Florida who are brainstorming how to improve our character and how to improve ourselves as much as possible. All we're trying to do is just be the biggest tournament threat possible. And so if you tune in, you know, you just see us talking about that and just constantly working towards that.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think why it's valuable is that a lot of people that are, I guess, a little more seasoned and more experienced, they have these conversations in private all the time on Facebook, you know, at tournaments. Yeah. But the greater public doesn't see that, and they don't really understand, like, how to break down, you know, what decisions need to be made. So I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah. And there's basically goals of how to improve Falcon directly that are pretty easily laid out at this point. We've like basically decided that you should get the most control over his grounded movement as possible with manipulating the distance and speed of his dash dance, and using like crouch out of run to re-access your dash dance, using pivot jumps and shield stops and pivots and like empty pivots as ways to stop his momentum. Like Falcon in 2009 and Falcon in 2010 had a lot of trouble with, like, he can't stop his momentum, so if he's traveling in one direction, you can expect him to keep traveling in that direction often. You know, it's true that he can dash dance back and forth, of course, but he usually can never stop in place, and so now we're working on that ability to do that, and the tech skill of his jumps. In order to make yourself more precise, you have to gain a lot of like control over how to do analog jumps, how to drift, how to fastball, and how to constantly get them right. You know, out of pressure, out of shield, and all that stuff.
So, I feel like there's like a big stigma against what you guys are doing, and I feel like it's like a mix of like kind of having the cool, like, I don't want to like seem like I'm trying too hard, or I want to be the guy that says like, yeah, I didn't study for this exam, but I got an A, and I feel like that's very prevalent in Smash culture. Now, where I'm going with this is, like, what dividends have you been seeing in your results and how you've been playing against other people as you're implementing these techniques?
Well, the first immediate dividend is that I know that I'm more in control of my character to the point where if I have a specific intention, like, I think a lot of times, this next thought is going to be weird. I don't think I've like well developed this enough to try to communicate what I'm going to anyway.
All right, let's flesh it out anyway.
I think sometimes Melee, you just try to think of a thing happening or an intention that you have, and you expect it to just show up on screen. And sometimes because of your technical ability or, you know, something like that, that doesn't quite happen. Like, for example, if you just predict that somebody is going to move towards the ledge when you're hunting them and they're going to try to fall onto the ledge, you know, you want to just put a hitbox there immediately. But if there's a disconnect between what you're thinking and what you're visualizing happening and what's actually happening, you're worse. And so that's the easiest dividend to explain, you know, that now I'm in a lot better control of my character, so I just feel like I can be anywhere, anytime, and I can do whatever, you know, whatever I am intending to do. I can like impose my will a little bit better because of that. Does that make sense? Are you following so far?
Yeah.
But the most like important dividend the most important benefit that we're pushing for is to use, or that I'm pushing for, because Wizzy and Gatsu don't really agree with it as much as I do, but I believe that you can punish tech rolls with reactionary stomps and knees, and this is what I put the most time into. So for me, I think it's a little bit surprising that people think it's lame, because it would be, you know, if I got to the point where I mastered this tech, you know, if I mastered this ability to tech chase with stomps and knees, people would be freaking out, you know. If I'm in top 8 and I'm just like, every time you do a tech roll, you just die in this horrendous, like, huge combo, people are going to be really hyped. And so I think it's weird that they're kind of discouraging it in the buildup of it as I'm trying to practice and, you know, master this skill set. People are telling me that it's like lame, but I am a firm believer that you should try as hard as you can. You should do everything that you can to improve yourself. And so I'm never going to have the attitude of like wanting to appear as if I didn't like put any effort into it. I don't really appreciate, or I don't really believe in the natural or anything like that. Like the kind of aura that Mango goes for is not something that I strive for or really put credit into. Do you know what I'm saying?
And to be honest, I don't even think he goes about it like that either. Like,
yeah.
If you really watch his stream, he's practicing, you know, basic movement all the time. And so I think it's a funny myth that, you know, people are perpetuating, and part of it's due to the documentary, in my opinion. I think something that, you know, you're reminding me of is the fact that like, if Armada were to tell us back in 2007 the things that he's doing to react to the things and punishing, like, we'd all, I think, have a very similar reaction to what people are having with you right now.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like we're trying to push our character to just be the best that he possibly can. Like, we're trying to figure out every situation and just, you know what our strongest options are, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be a robot. Armada's not just a mindless robot. He's still doing amazing things. He's still beating you in neutral in like really incredible ways, and we hope to get there as well. So it's not I just think that that's like this weird negative perception that is attached to it.
And I agree. So, I mean, I feel like, you know, there's like two camps that people are perpetuating, and I think Johnny, at the end of the day, would probably admit that, you know, 20GX and what you guys are doing, you know, you guys have a lot of commonality. And so what are some things that you take away when you watch StJ and Mango?
Well, so when I was in Florida and I was studying things in the debug menu, I found, which I'm sure that, okay, people have said, you know, this must have been discovered before, this must be something that's discovered before, but I think I was the first person to, like, from a scientific standpoint, be able to completely outline how it works and everything like that. But basically, I found that during the second to last frame, without sounding too dense, but right before you're about to jump, with any character, the amount that you're holding away from the center of your stick in either direction on the x-axis determines like the initial velocity of your jump, and it determines like the distance of your jump. And I was actually amazed once I found this to look back and rewatch Mango videos with this new fresh information in my mind to see immediately that he was one of the only players, and definitely the only Falcon, to have this ability like completely mastered, which for me was amazing. And that was the most inspiring thing for me, to be like, to get to a point where I understood a part of the game more, and I can look back at a top player and just be like, wow, like that thing that I just finally started to understand, he has very like well implemented and very well mastered. And so when I watch Mango, I'm mostly looking for examples of him exploiting his ability to do these analog jumps, which is what I call them, as well as controlled drift, because for me it's amazing how many more like situations he is able to set up because of his control to do that, like stomps on your shield that actually are putting you in a really bad spot, whereas a normal stupid Falcon would just stomp on your shield and get shield grabbed, or, you know, any situation like that. But that for me is what I mainly am like focusing on Mango for. StJ to me represents, he's also far ahead of us on the meta of being able to like shield stop and make things out of that. But that's basically what we're pushing for. That's the same thing. We want to use shield stops, but we also want to use pivot jumps to create the same momentum stop, but a little bit like faster and cleaner. And so we can watch him and learn how he's like making situations happen with this momentum stopping abilities. And we can also see how, like, for me, I'm impressed with how volatile he is out of his dash dance. He can be dash dancing in certain spaces and really make very quick threats happen out of that. And so I look to StJ for his ability to like move through many situations, never mess up, constantly be having like a huge threat on you in like well spaced and tight dash dances and everything like that. He's great at moving out of shield. He is like, I don't know, he's just great on stage almost always. Like, I feel like he is obviously nowhere near like myself or Hacks or Wizzy or Gatsu at like being on the ledge and like doing ledge tech skill or anything like that, but I think it would be cool to see if he implemented that, and I think that his on-stage gameplay is really fun to watch and really awesome. So
yeah, and I feel like you guys communicate the same thing, but just like with different language. Like if you were to ask like StJ, like what do you do in this neutral like situation, he'd probably explain something. Rather, he'd come across like similar conclusions to what you guys are finding out too.
Yeah. I think we are focusing on the same things. He does late up airs and late knees, which is like what we're thinking is like a huge important mix-up, and like he's always still well spaced. I can tell that he has still control of his analog and jump drifts. It's just not like to Mango's level or anything yet. But he's like so fast, and sometimes it looks like he's not messing up at all. And he even does some of the things that we thought like nobody really has implemented, but it's hard to tell if he's doing it on purpose sometimes.
So you made an announcement that you weren't really gonna go to tournaments, and I read the post, but do you want to explain what is going on for you in terms of like adjusting to tournaments and whatnot? Because I think a lot of mindset related things are huge.
Yeah, I basically just was reaching a point of Melee where I didn't feel like I was enjoying it anymore. I felt like it was a burden to play, and even though I still wanted to practice the whole time, I still like, for me, I just think I gained this weird thing of like practicing alone is very calming to me, and like very, it's like very built into my routine. But going to tournaments and having all this like Florida pressure of like people, I still don't think people understand how hard Florida is to just get through a weekly bracket is like ridiculous, but having all this pressure all the time at all these tournaments to do well was making me feel a little bit like less like I enjoyed it, and it was very easy for me to get like angry or really sad. I guess I developed this bad habit of like anytime I messed up, I would really beat myself up and be like, man, I suck, like I should not have messed that up.
Yeah.
And I was not able to let go of that while I'm also trying to focus on playing in Melee and playing optimally and playing as well as I can, So I decided to take a break because I thought that I believe that Melee teaches you about real life. I think that Melee is related to self-improvement, and I thought this was eye-opening to me that I didn't have control in a stressful situation of myself to the point where I could, remove those self-doubts or remove those types of things. And so I decided to focus on that as my main intention instead of tournament play so much. And so I got into meditation, and I just tried to be introspective and just tried to focus on my tournament mindset. And in the meantime, I learned a lot of things. Like I learned about flow state, which is basically most people understand it as the zone, and it's like your ability to be the most in the moment and focused on something while you're doing it. And I learned a lot about just basically what my tournament mindset needs to be since taking that hiatus. And now I'm almost at the end, and I'm almost ready to exit the hiatus and enter my tournament life again, where I have to keep keeping up to everybody's expectations and show people how good I am, blah blah blah. And I feel a lot more prepared. I know that I'm going to be a noob at this. I know it's going to be really hard for me to be in flow state I know it's going to be hard for me to be in flow state at Evo or at a huge national, but now that I feel like I have the skill set that I'm looking for exactly defined, I can approach it as like a noob. I'm trying to develop this, and this is why I'm going to tournaments instead of not feeling like I had a reason to go to tournaments.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah, I totally feel you on that. Like, cause like, I went to a Mayhem once and I beat StJ Hugs and Connor, and I got 7th to show for it. And I was just like, I would have had to beat Fly, SFAT, Fiction to get even money at the tournament. And it's very demotivating. But so we're closing into the last 10 minutes. There's a lot of new players, and you are a player that made a significant jump to like top 32 relevancy. What advice do you give to a player that's been stuck for a while?
Well, see, it's weird for me to exactly explain it, but it feels like you need to take a step back and try to actually see the ways that you're not improving in a game. Like a really basic example I see is that a lot of times players get caught up practicing Nair Shine as a spacey or something, but you never see any kind of variation in what timing they Nair or what timing they fast fall, and you never see them drifting back and forth. You only see them doing it in place. And For me, I just think that people have like a rigid way of thinking about the game, and they're not trying to push themselves to be flexible. Like, if you want to be a top player, you have to learn and implement a lot of things that aren't even in your mind right now. Like, you don't even understand them. So when you're trying to improve, it should be a quest to not only improve on the things that you already know you have to improve on, but also figure out what you're not even understanding. You know, when I realized that analog jumps were a thing, I felt like I was a lot closer to Mango's skill level than I was before I realized that it was a thing, because now there's a whole new realm to me that I understand something that was completely out of my mind, you know, completely impossible to think about before that, right?
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like, whenever like I self-discover, somebody like explains to me something like I didn't know, it's like I feel like a power boost every time. I'm like, wow, like that's amazing, and it also like makes me like flabbergasted, because I'm like, wow, like I really don't know much about this game.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, and so that's basically what I need to be like focusing on. And that's what I think like newer players should be focusing on. It's like tech skill practice or whatever, solo practice for you should not just be a repetitive thing where, you know, I wave land off the platform and then I do this back air and I perfectly dash away and I just do that 40 times. It can't be that, because that's just going to be the tech skill that you practice in between stocks in a tournament match. You know what I'm talking about? Like, everybody has this like repetition that they do in between stocks. and I feel that is closely related to how they're practicing, because they're just practicing this repetitive movement. You have to take, like, if you want to learn how to back air really well with spaces, you have to be like, all right, I need to be able to do the fastest back air, I need to be able to do the lowest back air, I need to be able to do the highest range back air, I need to be able to do it out of this position and this position and this position. And so you should be practicing all of that and trying to be as fluid and you know, trying to be as fluid and flexible as possible.
And this is the time where I ask you, what are your shameless plugs? How do we get a hold of you guys? What's your stream? Do you have a YouTube channel?
Okay, so our stream is twitch.tv/20gx. That's really easy to find. And our YouTube channel, I think if you actually just search Captain Falcon, I think it's the first thing, but let me see if that's true or not. But it might be the first channel that pops up. No, you have to search Captain Falcon 20GX now, but we can't put a URL name on it, but if you search Captain Falcon 20GX, we have a good amount of videos on, and my name is Dustin White on Facebook. I'm all over, and people ask me questions. I try my best to get to every message and everything like that and reply to them. If I don't reply the first time, just ask again. It's not that I'm ignoring you, I just didn't see it. But yeah, we're all over Facebook. We have a Facebook group called 20GX as well, and basically we're just gonna keep trying to do this, keep trying to improve on all of these things. And I think yesterday for us was a wake-up call of, we can actually just make the stream all about us trying to improve as players, because people will enjoy watching us do everything that we can to improve. And so that's basically the game plan from here on out.
Okay, well, fair enough. So thank you very much, and really excited to see the new things that you guys continue to come up with. And so yeah, so follow them on Twitter and 20GX on Twitch. Thank you very much for coming on the stream.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
All right, good one.
See you later, man.
All right, thanks to